Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Hello.
It is Season 5, Episode 22. Austin and I are back today to talk about the Steelers and Eagles ahead of their Week 5 matchup here. The Steelers coming off their bye week, Austin. Man, it really feels like it's been forever since the Steelers last played a game.
Yeah, it really has. How do we make it through an off season?
I don't know, man. It's been quite the difficult year and quite the strange year, and it's been complicated recently by what's been going on with the Tennessee Titans and really just coronavirus all over the place. When it comes to the NFL, we've got what's going on with the Patriots and Cam Newton and the Jets' false positives. Where do you want to start with all this? Because I know we want to spend some time talking about the Titans.
I'll let you pick this week.
Well, I think we should start first with just the fact that, Cam Newton missed the game against the Chiefs last week. That wasn't crazy, but what was crazy is that Stephon Gilmore ended up testing positive for it after the game, and on Monday Night Football, he was seen hugging Patrick Mahomes after the game. That would really be a difficult blow for the NFL to take if their face of the league is catching coronavirus from a guy who tested positive but didn't know that he had it at the time.
It wouldn't have been a good look, and it would have been awful for the Chiefs to lose their star quarterback. That's for sure.
I guess we don't know exactly what's going on, but it seems concerning that there's this possibility that players are developing, the incubation period is causing them to not test positive during the week, and then all of a sudden after the game it turns out they had it, and they can still spread it while that's going on.
Yeah, I think the NFL is facing that problem right now where the incubation period is really scaring teams. It really felt like this right after the Titans, like everything came down. I know that the Falcons were truly like the first in-season COVID-19 case with A.J. Terrell. After the Titans, it really felt like everywhere started getting infected with coronavirus because then you had the Patriots, then you had the Chiefs. Well, actually, I think you had the Chiefs first, then the Patriots. Then you had the Jets false positive, which was scary.
Don't forget the Saints false positive.
Sorry, what?
Don't forget the Saints. They had one, too.
Yeah, the fullback. Yeah, it became a way bigger deal after the Titans stuff.
So, there's a lot to piece together with what's been going on with the Titans, but when you look at this whole thing, there's a lot of being said about the way the NFL's handling this and has handled it and will handle it. Do you really think that the NFL maybe didn't have as good enough of a plan as they should have? Are they not as prepared, do you think? Or do you think it's something where, as is the case with many things that we're dealing with right now for the first time, until you actually have the issue to deal with, it's difficult to be ready for it until it happens?
I think the NFL is at least partially to blame. I feel like, you can't expect the unexpected, but you have to be ready for it. And everything looks better in retrospect, but after the Steelers debacle making their bye week to week 4, realistically, basically coming into the season, the NFL should have licked their chops and said, "We're getting rid of the Pro Bowl." No Pro Bowl. That's just not going to happen. It's not canceled at the moment, but it is not going to happen. Mixing teams is absolutely an awful idea. So, with that being said, they would have had an extra week. I know it's before the Super Bowl, and it would have sucked for the Super Bowl teams. You should have pushed everything back a week and either made a Week 18 or... No, I'm sorry. You would have always made a Week 18, but you could have either made a Week 18 that was a bye week for everyone, where if a team had a COVID-related cancellation, you could put it that week, or you could have given every team 2 bye weeks. Where could have been in the middle of the year, but I think Week 18 would have made sense just to have everyone at the end of the year have the same time. Because if you give everyone 2 bye weeks, then you have to work it out in the middle of the season, and it still might not work out right. But you could have made like a universal Week 8, everyone has a bye week, Week 8, and you push everything forward, and then it goes 18 weeks instead. So again, it looks good in retrospect, but the NFL should have been prepared than they were for the billion-dollar industry that they are.
Yeah, the one thing there is, and I know that we've talked a little bit about this, is that, right or wrong, the NFL was never going to, or the broadcasting networks were never going to agree to a week where there was no football at all. Just, wrong or right, which whatever, I wouldn't care that much, but because now they're going to have to deal with the same issues anyways, but, and when it comes to the Titans themselves, they were testing positive. The NFL delayed their game, pushed it back to Monday or Tuesday with Pittsburgh. Then they kept having positive tests, so they rescheduled the game, created a bye week for both them and the Steelers this past week now. And then they were basically told to isolate, quarantine. They shut down their facility. And then I forget what the timeline was exactly. I think it might have been before they canceled the game or postponed it. Do you remember?
The timeline for what exactly? I'm sorry.
The private workout that the players were seen at.
Oh, that was after.
That was after the game postponement.
Yes.
Okay. So, the game gets postponed, and while they're supposed to be in isolation, there's a picture seen of, I don't know exactly how many players were there, but there was a handful of players there having a private workout. So, they're breaking NFL COVID protocol. So now the question is, what kind of punishment can the NFL hand out? And there's a very slippery slope because I think forfeits are an extremely slippery slope. And I don't really know what the right decision is, but I actually think forfeits are the last thing that should be considered, even in an extreme scenario. I think that if you're going to take an extreme measure, it should be to kick them out of the league this year.
Yeah, what's it called? You have to think, right? You just talked about how networks weren't going to allow football to not be played. So losing an entire game doesn't bode well. Like they'd probably have to work. The networks would want that. They want the game played so they can make their money, get their viewership. More than likely, the Titans are going to lose draft picks going into this next season. I'd be surprised if they didn't. The rumors have been large with a unnamed GM saying that they should lose multiple. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to lose this year still because they were found to have broken protocol before and after. Before there was, I only really saw one tweet about it, but there's word that they were not wearing the contact tracers, which is like at all times, which is part of the reason why this was so bad for this to happen to the Titans. They weren't wearing the contact tracers. It wasn't as easy to track, and it was one of the people that had corona that they were trying to track. So then they did that, and then they had the private workout afterward. I think that the Titans are going to lose the draft pick.
What would you do if you were commissioner?
Well, networks are probably not going to let you cancel this game. They're probably not going to shut down the Titans for the same exact reason, because that would mean you're now down bunch of games and a bunch of random teams now get bye weeks whenever they play the Titans, so that I can't imagine that working out at all. I think I would take their first round pick for next year, but realistically, if it was up to me, I wouldn't take their first round pick. So this is a little bit of homerism, but it's just going to be how it is. So to me, I still feel like the Steelers got shafted. I feel like the Bills, even though the Bills now have to face the Chiefs on a short week after the Chiefs have a long rest. That sucks. Because the Bills, if they're actually competitors, that would have been a good game against the Chiefs. And they're not going to be rested for it, so we really won't know. But I would still rather play the now practice squad Titans like they're about to. I wish the Steelers were able to do that. I realize why they were not, but the Steelers were punished for basically no reason. So instead of taking the Titans' first-round pick, I would give the Titans' third-round pick to the Steelers as punishment, which is a very big homerism. But it just to me, like the price of not getting to play right there was pretty big for the Steelers. Not first-round big, not second-round big, but that would be what I would do. But I think the realistic thing is they lose a first-round pick like the Patriots did. No one gets it; it just disappears.
I'd take their first 2 picks away, and I'd suspend Mike Vrabel for the rest of the year.
That seems pretty. That seems about right, especially with how seriously they're taking this. You have to imagine one of the biggest fines you could get in the NFL right now is if you miss a COVID test, it's $50,000. It's a big fine. They're taking this very seriously. With the face mask, I'm going to go forward a little bit. The face mask, the fines weren't working. The fines were over $100,000 for the coach doing it and more for the team. And now on top of it, they're putting a 15-yard penalty that a referee can throw if a individual on any team comes up to them not wearing a face mask. If they did, because this has been a thing, coaches have been pulling down their face masks to yell at referees like they normally do. Now a referee can throw a penalty flag that'll cost them 15 yards because it's an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. The NFL is taking this very seriously, which they should. And at this point, because they have to, because at the moment the Titans are really messed up everything. So it would make sense to strip the Titans of that, and if not more.
Yeah, and when it comes to Vrabel, I just think that, the buck stops with him. I don't know how much you think this all falls on him, but at the end of the day, it's his team. And I wouldn't be surprised if he influenced his guys to maybe organize that little practice. I mean, maybe he didn't, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did, which is why I think you have to hit him hard. And you have to make sure that everyone understands that, maybe you can't suspend players necessarily because you don't know exactly who all was there. But you can suspend the coach, and that's going to be pretty damaging. And you could send a strong message to the rest of the league. Guys like John Gruden, who can kind of make a mockery of the NFL's rules with wearing a mask, and you could hit the Titans where it hurts and then turn around and say to the rest of the teams and coaches that aren't taking it as seriously and say, you're next if you don't shape up.
Just another facet of this, how serious the NFL is taking this. The NFL really didn't want that picture of the Titans practicing to come out. The NFL Network NFL affiliate has just suspended Ian Rappaport for 2 weeks for posting that photo. They're taking this serious. They don't want the NFL to be associated with spreading coronavirus or anything like this. They're willing to suspend him for that, which doesn't really seem fair at all. The NFL is going to come down on its teams that really started this.
So it wasn't that Manscaped ad?
Oh, I'm an idiot. I forgot that the story changed. I'm an idiot.
It's okay.
I'm just straight up. I don't know why in my head I still thought it was the picture
Maybe
of the Titans.
because it's more believable.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm sorry. I literally forgot the story had changed.
That seems kind of amazing that he would tweet something like that, though, just because I would think that, when have you ever seen Ian Rappaport tweeting about a product?
Never. It was on his Instagram, apparently. I never saw it.
Oh, yeah, I didn't either. I don't think anyone ever saw it, to be honest with you. Everyone was like, what happened?
Yeah. Everyone in the comments, that's what I was confused with. Everyone in the comments was like, oh, it's because he posted the picture of the Titans.
So any final thoughts on what's going on with the Titans? The Titans returned to practice today, so I suppose that's good news.
Yeah, the Titans had no positive cases today. The NFL didn't, so we're good.
And they play on Tuesday.
Do play on Tuesday now. Tuesday against the Bills.
So it gives them today, tomorrow, and Monday.
Yeah, they have time to get maybe 1 or 2 players back. We'll see. It took James Washington 13 days to come off it. Jalen Samuels 8. Forget the others, but it's possible that one of the people on the list could come off, or a few.
All right, you want to turn our attention to the game?
Sure. Just to start off with the game, I want to talk about the injury report and some practice squad elevations. So, for the Eagles, Avonte Maddox will not play in his return to Heinz Field, at least in the regular season. He has an ankle injury. Alshon Jeffrey, illness in foot, and Deshaun Jackson hamstring are also out for them. Lane Johnson, surprisingly, doesn't have an injury designation. He left the last game with a lingering ankle injury, but didn't return, and he didn't have designation this week. For the Steelers, Marcus Allen with plantar fasciitis. I can't say that word.
It's
Derek Watt
it's fasciitis, believe it or not.
Fasciitis.
Yep.
And Derek Watt hamstring are out. As you can see, the bye week did nothing for the Steelers, so that wasn't helpful. And then Trey Edmonds was, as I called it, I think on last podcast, he was elevated for this game. Derek Watt will likely be active, and Trey Edmonds will be filling his role on special teams, and we might see Trey Edmonds at fullback. We'll have to see.
I'm trying to read this press release from the Steelers. He will likely revert back to the practice squad after the game. Did someone go on IR?
Oh, he automatically reverts to the practice squad after the game.
Oh, okay.
And no, that's just how it works. Was he being elevated from the practice squad? What that means is you have to make one more player inactive that's on your active roster every time you do that. So what the Steelers are going to do is they're going to make Derek Watt the extra inactive this week. Like probably the same as, but then we'll probably have like the same inactive list as last week plus Derek Watt.
These new roster rules are so confusing.
They are complicated. I didn't realize that until the year started and I started seeing teams have extra inactives. I was like, why do they have extra inactives? It's because they're elevating people from their practice squad.
All right, so let's get into this game now. So Steelers and Eagles, the last time they played, by the way, I don't know if you remember this game, Austin. This was just a handful of weeks before we actually started this podcast back in the 2016 season of Carson Wentz's rookie year. We were going into that game thinking the Steelers, they were 2-0. They might be able to get a nice 3-0 start against a rookie quarterback, and then they walk into Philadelphia and get blown up. They get the doors blown off them 34-3 in a game that Carson Wentz played probably the best game of his short career to that point. And the Steelers, I think that was the last game of Marcus Wheaton's Steelers career, either that or the next week. I remember he dropped a touchdown, and then Chris Boswell had a field goal blocked.
It was a tough week. I do remember that game. I watched that with my Eagles fan friends, so that wasn't an enjoyable experience, to say the least. So I remember that pretty well. I hope it doesn't go like that, even though with similar circumstances that the Steelers should be favored in this game.
Here's a nice bit of news. So this will be the second time the Eagles have played at Heinz Field. Both previous times were Steelers wins, the first time in 2004, a 27-3 victory for Pittsburgh, and in 2012 where the Steelers defeated the Michael Vick-led Eagles 16-14 on a last-second Sean Schweissen field goal, where back in 2012. So speaking of the Heinz Field, there are going to be Steelers fans, really fans in general, allowed in the stadium for the first time this year. 5,500 fans allowed.
That's awesome. Glad that fans are finally able to participate and get there. Hopefully it stays safe.
Yeah, hopefully the fans don't take advantage of this opportunity and are responsible while doing so. And maybe that number can increase to, I guess, relatively safe numbers, as long as they increase within reason, as long as they're continuing to be safe over the next few months, That would be nice.
It would be. It would be really cool because other stadiums at the moment are allowing 7,500, but you could go in the reverse direction like Green Bay did. Wisconsin has so many cases that they stopped taking fans from now on. Again.
And then there's other. I think like Kansas City has 17,000, and I heard Miami was looking at 50% capacity pretty soon.
Florida's dumb.
Florida's nuts, but
that's... Not to get political, but the mayor said that they can have a full stadium if they want. The NFL said...
He said a full stadium. Whoa, I didn't hear that.
No, the NFL said they're not doing that. The NFL said, thanks, but we're good. But the governor said that they could have everyone they would like, if they would like. They could open up the stadium completely.
Wow. Talk about virus fatigue.
Yeah.
Ready to leave it in the past.
And this is why Florida is one of the worst states right now.
Anyways, I was not aware of that. But regardless, focusing back to the Steelers and Eagles, yeah, I mean, you want to just talk about the Heinz Field atmosphere, it's really seemed not crazy different. I feel like it's more noticeable in college football, the stale atmosphere of no fans, but it's not like it's not noticeable in the NFL either.
Yeah, it's definitely weird, and I heard from the reporters and stuff that are there, it's actually really weird. So the players, it's got to be weird too. I mean, some players take advantage. C.J. Watt got on, and I forgot who he talked to this past week, but he was talking about how he's, with the no fans, he's learning cadences and learning to get off the line way better because he could just hear. But, I mean, I guess there is some pros to this so far, but, yeah.
All right, what do you want to look at first? Offense v. Eagles defense or vice versa, defense v. Eagles offense?
Let us look at our offense versus the Eagles defense.
Alrighty. So
500, please.
What was that?
I said for 500, please.
For 500, yeah. Well, let's kind of work from the front to the back. I think the most dangerous part of this Eagles defense is their front four. And, I mean, it's really more than four players, but you've got edge rushers and Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, who have all been solid this year. And then they've got, obviously, Fletcher Cox, who has perennially been one of the best interior defensive linemen. And there's our old buddy, Javon Hargrave, finally back in action for the Eagles. They're using him a little differently, more so as a penetrating tackle, similarly to what he was doing whenever Stephon Tuitt or Cam Hayward was injured. But this front is scary, particularly the linemen. They have the most sacks in the NFL. Not as many sacks per game as the Steelers, but they do lead the NFL in sacks as of today.
Yeah, it definitely starts with that front four, man. Then front four, I mean, that's really it, to be honest. It doesn't start with the front four. It starts and ends there, too. It's like their cornerstone of their defense. It's the really only good part. And it's the part that the Steelers have to worry about the most because those pass rushers are really good. I feel like as of late, Fletcher Cox is a really underrated guy in the NFL. I understand that he's maybe not, top 5 pass rusher material, but, he's up there in pass rushers in the NFL, and I feel like he's often forgot about. He's a really, really good player that typically, I don't know about this year because you'd be able to tell me more. But he's a guy that's typically graded well in PFF in the past, so...
I'll get on that right now.
Yeah. I don't know how he's graded this year, but he's a guy that I feel like is undervalued. Not as undervalued as Chandler Jones has been, but still a guy that is undervalued, in my opinion.
I think typically he's been that tier below Aaron Donald, which is right where Cam Hayward is.
Yeah, exactly. I should have said that. That's a perfect comparison. He's underappreciated like Cameron Hayward is in the national way. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So last year, among defenders that played at least 20% of 926 snaps, which was the most snaps played by an interior lineman. You want to hear this about for the Steelers? They had all 3 of their down linemen in the top 10 in terms of PFF grade for defense. Donald was first, followed by Hayward in second. Stephon Tuitt was 5th, and Hargrave was 9th. Fletcher Cox was 8th, by the way, last year.
So, like I said, not top 5, but almost. Right there. He's there. So, I think he's a guy that's been undervalued lately.
2 years ago, he was actually the second best defensive tackle in the league, according to PFF grade. And then 5th. So yeah, perennially a top 10 pushing top 5 type of guy. And he doesn't put up the big sack numbers like Aaron Donald does, but he's just 2 years removed from having 10.5, which is a career best. So he can still get after the passer, and he's been someone that's been a thorn in the side of David DeCastro for years now. And like we said, they've got other options in Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, and obviously Javon Hargrave, Malik Jackson, guys that aren't, overly dominant, but guys that work well as a group.
Yeah, and that's why this is our strength. Now you kind of move back a little bit and you see them weaken up a bit. Their linebackers have not been very good this year. They just put T.J. Edwards on IR, who's their starting inside linebacker. I looked at him. I thought he was a really smart player, and I liked him. From what my friend said, he was okay. Bernard Avery was another one of my prospects that he is still currently playing. My Eagles fan friend has said he's been trash, but I really liked him in Cleveland and stuff. But he has not been good. And you just look at them in coverage; they have been really struggling against the tight end. The Eagles defense has allowed opposing tight ends to catch 26 passes for 276 yards and 5 touchdowns on the year. 3 came against Tyler Higbee in the Rams game, but George Kittle last week destroyed them. Logan Thomas did pretty well against them, got a touchdown. But they have been getting destroyed in coverage against tight ends.
Yeah, the linebackers have no answers right now. I mean, they have, on the depth chart, they have 5 guys right now, and none of them are particularly good at pass coverage, and they aren't really that physically demanding or intimidating in the running game either. They are, however, over aggressive. I know that they do fly to the ball, so one thing you might see in this game is that old toss counter that we used to see against the Patriots.
That'd be cool. I'd like that. If they're going to run downhill, you do the toss counter. I like that. I hope to see that.
Looking back to the secondary, they've got a couple decent names. You know, the names you're familiar with, Jalen Mills and Darius Slay, Avonte Maddox. I don't know how Slay is performing this year. I'll have to check into that. But outside of that, I don't think there's anything too impressive on their back end.
Yes, Slay has been doing well from what I've heard. He's been really well. He hasn't given up a touchdown in the year yet, so he's good. Who is going to be starting as their third cornerback, though? Because they do not have Maddox for this game.
Yeah, that's right. Nickel Roby-Coleman, and if not him...
my man.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be most likely him.
So, all right, Saints fans' favorite player. That's interesting. I know Maddox has been up and down player for Philadelphia, but he's managed to be a starter for basically this long, or stand the 53 for this long. So, I mean, it still sucks to lose a starter, but other than Slay, like, I'm not really worried, and it's just kind of tough. From what I gathered, Slay doesn't match up against a slot receiver ever. It's like at least so far this year. So I'd be surprised if they pulled him over for Juju if Juju's playing out of the slot. So just in terms of this game, I wouldn't be surprised if Deontay Johnson in his return gets shut down, because it's probably going to be the guy lined up with Slay. But Juju is going to be able to eat, because Slay supposedly doesn't ever come to the slot.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting thing about Darius Slay, his PFF grade between 2014 and 2018 was never lower than 70.9, which is pretty good. Last year he ranked in 56 was his grade, which is terrible.
That's awful for Detroit. Oh yeah, he only played for Detroit. I was thinking he split his year with in Detroit, but no.
And Avonte Maddox, just for point of reference, his grades have been in the mid-50s, and this year it's at a 45. So they think he's not good at all.
I mean, it's a straight poo garbage. It's okay. It happens.
So this secondary can be had.
Yeah. If you go away from Darius Slay, and if you're targeting your tight ends, they can easily be had, because linebackers aren't good. I know the linebackers aren't secondary, but I'm just thinking of totally in coverage. Like, in coverage in general, you could beat them by just attacking their linebackers or your tight ends. You could beat them by targeting anyone but Darius Slay. And that doesn't mean don't go for Darius Slay. You could still win that matchup. But it feels like their secondary just isn't very good. Their safeties aren't very good either. They're okay. I like Will Parks, but I'm pretty sure he's on IR. Or he's starting, he hasn't done much.
So what's kind of the idea for the Steelers offense in this game? Because you've got that fearsome defensive line that you've got to be careful of, but you've got areas where you can attack over the field.
I like the idea of running a lot of heavy sets with tight ends. And so you're mixing in throwing the tight ends and the run game, like, in those heavy sets. Like, a lot of them look like they're rushing attempts, but they end up being passes to tight ends because you could exploit them that way. I think that's going to be a good way to attack this game, is to run a lot of tight end heavy sets where you have Ebron and McDonald in together, and then you might have Honor, and maybe you'll switch it up. Maybe you'll take off one of the tight ends. You'll put in Trey Edmonds as a fullback as well. I think that's a good way to attack them. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd be in agreement with that. I'm not. They've given up a varied amount of yardage. They've given up over 400 plus yards in 2 games, and they've had 304 or less twice as well. I don't know. I do think that they can be had. You look at the teams they played. They played Washington, which doesn't have a very good offense right now. They played Cincinnati, which, Joe Burrow is good, but that offensive line is bad. They played the 49ers without Jimmy Garoppolo, and even though they forced 3 turnovers, they still gave up 400 yards.
Yeah, and they played that game without Raheem Mostert as well, so... And they got George Kittle back, but George Kittle's what destroyed them. George Kittle got 183 yards himself.
So, I had some statistics I wanted to look at here. I guess I'll look at them right now from PFF, and then we'll kind of transition to the other side because we're going to be looking at the quarterbacks here for a second. Mm-hmm. So, I'll start with what I gathered for the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger. I thought it was interesting to note that he has not thrown an interception when he's kept clean this season, given a clean pocket, and he has the 15th best passer rating of 107.4, which is pretty good. He's been pressured on just 22.2% of his dropbacks this season, which is the 4th lowest percentage. His passer rating when under pressure is 93.8, which is the 8th best in the NFL. And his deep completion percentage of 21.4% is 29th in the NFL. So what you can probably take away from all of this right now is that he's done a good job of not turning the football over. We know this. He hasn't been pressured much, not yet. And when he has been under pressure, he's been pretty solid. However, his numbers are probably suffering a little bit because he has struggled to hit the deep ball.
That makes sense. I mean, he was trying to get warm. He's a little bit struggling there. It sucks that the bye week happened this week because he said he was starting to feel warm, and this kind of stunned that. But yeah, the deep ball isn't there, but if he still plays like he's been playing everywhere else, that's okay.
Another instance of Ben Roethlisberger not having complete chemistry with his receivers is that when he's been in the pocket, when he's held onto the ball for more than 2.5 seconds, his passer rating of 82 is only 24th in the NFL among 32 quarterbacks. So when he's holding onto the ball, the old classic Ben Roethlisberger hasn't really been around all that much because he's not holding on to it long, A. But also, B, he hasn't connected with his receivers a ton after the play because he's not used to playing with many of them. Now, that being said, his only interception came when he had 6 seconds to throw the ball too, so that's also dragging that number down.
That was a tough interception. That was bad, but at least it's the only one on the year, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just the one throw where you could say you can't take them away, but that's the one instance where you'd be like, if you take that away, it would probably be he'd probably be a lot closer to league average. Put it that way.
Yeah.
So now, flipping over to the other side, Carson Wentz. We're going to look at that same statistic when he's been in the pocket for 2.5 or more seconds. He has the worst passer rating in the NFL. He has 5 interceptions, which is the most in the NFL. His passer rating is 42.8. The second worst passer rating is 61. The difference between Carson Wentz's passer rating with more than 2.5 seconds in the pocket from 32 to 31 is greater than number 1 to number 4. So, I mean, that's a huge difference right there.
So what you're saying is drop everyone. Cameron Hayward falls back. Tyson Long falls back. So no pass rushers, just make them throw it.
I'm trying to get some context here with his statistics. I mean...
And can't throw from a clean pocket, so just drop everyone. No pass rush. Give him 80 seconds. We'll never find someone open.
He has almost 60% of his dropbacks are more than 2.5 seconds. So he's got a lot. He's got a lot of passes. It looks like he's just struggling to complete passes. Yeah, he's near the bottom of the league in completion percentage when he's got that much time. So I would assume that also a lot of it has to do with people aren't getting open. I mean, have you seen the receivers he's playing with?
Yeah, his best one's a former quarterback. That sucks.
Yeah, Greg
Because they
Ward.
have Nelson Aguilar to blame things on anymore.
And
It's just tough.
yeah, it is tough. The problem is he hasn't really been helping necessarily either. Where was that? Oh, here we go. Some additional stats to compare with Ben Roethlisberger. I said Carson Wentz has 5 interceptions when he's kept clean, which is the worst. He's also has a passer rating of 77.8, which is ranked 30th among 32 quarterbacks. He's pressured on just under a third of his dropbacks, which is the 12th highest rate at 31.5%. His rating when pressured is 28, which is the second worst in the NFL. And his deep completion percentage of 33.3, exactly 1/3, is 25th in the NFL. So he's slightly better than Roethlisberger at the deep ball, but everywhere else he's considerably worse.
Yeah, that's not good. Slightly better at the deep ball, where Ben hasn't been good really at all. It's not that great. So feels like Wentz coming into this should struggle. And I think if I heard you say correctly before, you said that 60% of his dropbacks are 2.5 seconds or more. That won't work against the Steelers. It's not going to happen, especially not with their offensive line in the shape it is. He can't be dropping back for 2.5 seconds on most of his snaps. It's just not going to work in his favor.
And regarding the blitzing, how often do you think the Steelers are going to blitz in this one?
I feel like they shouldn't. I feel like the blitzing should come way down and just if he really struggles from a clean pocket, I'm not really. I was joking before about dropping everyone, but add more to coverage. If he's really struggling more against better coverage and getting the ball there, don't blitz that much. Just play safe. Let your pass rusher work against your normal pass rusher work against the shoddy line, and let it go to work. I wouldn't be mad if the Steelers only blitz 5 times in this game. I feel like it would work.
Now, one thing to keep in mind is that a big reason why the Steelers have so many sacks of under 2.5 seconds is because they're unloading a huge amount of pressure. So just keep that in mind that's where a lot of those pressure numbers are coming from too. Is you're just sending so many numbers.
That is true. So maybe you blitz still less than you have been, but more than what I said.
All right. All right. So. Elsewhere, you mentioned this offensive line for the Eagles has been a disaster, really. They're all injured, just like the receivers.
It's really, really bad. They lost possibly the best guard in the NFL before the season started. Dane Johnson has had a reoccurring injury.
Although he will play though.
He will play. They lost Andre Dillard, who was supposed to be starting at left tackle. They now have lost Jason Peters, who moved from left guard to left tackle. It's all bad. Everything is bad for them. It's tough. They were starting one of my prospects, Jack Driscoll, last week, and they had to start him earlier in the year.
They were starting another one, and the converted rugby player Jordan Mailata.
Yeah, last week, and Mailata is probably playing again this week because left tackle is with Jason Peters out. Jack Driscoll doesn't fit as a left tackle, so you can't move him over there. So they're probably going to go with my other prospect, undrafted free agent rookie Jordan Mailata. So that line is tough, and Lane Johnson could come out at any time. Might not have an injury designation, but they said this injury is going to linger. He looked like he was in pain. He's playing through pain. He is not at 100%. And I don't get it. I don't get how he doesn't get an injury designation. He's going to be playing through an injury all year, basically what they said. But so basically, he's playing injured. That's all I'm trying to say.
And then as far as the receivers go, that's another mess on its own. Like you said, right now, Deshaun Jackson is out. Greg Ward is basically your top option right now. I mean, Jalen Rager's out. I mean,
Jeffrey hasn't played a snap this year.
Yeah, he's out. I mean, I believe you looked at J.J. Arcega-Whiteside too. He has done nothing through almost a year and a half now. I mean, he is. I mean, you have to slap him on a milk carton. The guy's been missing, nowhere to be found, and even with all these injuries, he's still nowhere to be found. So I mean, there's just no capable receivers here right now.
Yeah, they have to rely on 2 tight end sets. It's almost a wonder that they were able to win last week without having. I mean, they were still running the 2 tight end set because even their third tight end is actually really solid.
Richard Rodgers. Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't have Dallas Goedert, so like they literally have to rely on 2 tight end sets, and like all their passes go to those two for the most part. That's why Dallas Goedert still puts up big numbers, even behind Zach Ertz. I mean, like their one wide receiver is Ward. That's all they use basically. I mean, it's not all they use. J-Jaw gets on the field, but like you said, they're just not doing anything.
Travis
They
Fulgham.
literally rely on the 2 tight end sets.
Travis Fulgham was the guy that emerged last week, so look out for him too.
Yeah.
But,
that tight end, I forgot.
But yeah, their 2 tight ends, Zach Ertz and Richard Rodgers, are basically their 2 biggest weapons outside of their running backs right now. I don't know how often Carson Wentz checks it down, but I have to imagine that if you have Miles Sanders or Boston Scott, you want them right now.
Yeah. You need to have a quick dump down option in this game. And it's not going to come from the wide receivers. That's for sure.
So let's talk about
running backs in the flat.
Let's talk about Miles Sanders a little bit. He was Saquon Barkley's backup at Penn State back in the day. Had a solid year last year. Maybe not like overly great, but I thought he did a good job emerging in his first season in the NFL. What do you think about Miles Sanders right now?
I liked him a lot better coming into the year. So far, he's been I thought that because the Eagles showed so much. Eagles were like one of the only teams that had like a clear-cut starter at running back this year. Like there was a lot of obviously Christian McCaffrey is a clear-cut starter and stuff like that, but the Eagles put a lot of faith in Miles Sanders, not getting him any help, just kind of leaving him alone. I mean, yeah, they had Boston Scott and Corey Clement, but they didn't really. They just signed Clement. They didn't have him early on, but regardless, it's just like they put a lot of faith in him, and it had me believing. I was like, wow, he's probably going to be decent for them. I liked him as a fantasy option, but so far he's just been, he's been okay. He's just, like nothing special. It's been okay.
I think an issue is there's just nothing around him, like you said.
The teams aren't really scared of Carson Wentz passing at the moment. That's for sure. Carson Wentz is really, really struggling, and part of it is because they don't even have any wide receivers to have to cover either. So Carson Wentz playing bad and the wide receivers not being very good other than Ward, it's teams can really load up against the run.
I've heard it explained that he's still making a lot of the right decisions, but for some reason his mechanics are completely off, and he's missing wide open throws.
Maybe it's just a lack of training camp and stuff, or having it start so late. Maybe that's thrown him off.
But it's almost so bad, it's almost like he has the yips.
Maybe seeing ghosts.
Now, I will say last week was probably his best game of the season so far, given what he was dealing with.
Yeah, no, like I said, no Dallas Goedert, so not one of his top 3 receiving threats, and he still managed to pull out a pretty solid win.
So what's kind of the key to this game for both sides, for the Steelers?
For offense, it's got to be attack those linebackers and the tight ends. I think I harped on that enough, but it's like you got to attack those linebackers. They're really weak in coverage. They're very aggressive too. So you got to take advantage of that and target the middle of the field with your tight ends. Because I mean, it's you're bound to get a big one from either Ebron or McDonald in this game. And on the defensive side of things, I think it's almost not the opposite, but it's like, don't be too aggressive. You don't need to be aggressive against this offensive line. You don't need to be aggressive against Carson Wentz. It's just, it's kind of cliche. Just be smart, play smart. Don't be aggressive. Don't. It's almost more for Keith Butler, just not to be aggressive.
I'll kind of placate off of that and say just don't give up the explosive plays on defense. There were a ton of explosive plays given up to the Texans 2 weeks ago. You want to make this offense drive the length of the field because I don't believe that they can.
Yeah, no, it's really tough. I mean, with how well the Steelers have played against the rush, it's just going to be tough if Carson Wentz just has to throw the entire time. Miles Sanders needs to find a way to get some rushing yards in this game better than the past opponents of the Steelers.
Yeah, play your off coverages, stop the run, make them go those 8, 9, 10 play drives down the field because I don't think they can. I mean, if they start hitting big plays, then that starts to open things up and then you're in trouble. So just don't give up the big plays and be sure-handed when you tackle. On offense, I'm going to go a little bit different than you. Mine is going to be just score early. We ended a big streak last 2 weeks ago, I should say. 25 straight games with a turnover ended. I'd like to see 2 different streaks end this week. I'd like to see the Steelers, number 1, score an opening drive touchdown for the first time since the Patriots game 2 seasons ago, week 15. I would also like to see the Steelers score 30-plus points for the first time since the 2018 game against the Chargers. You'll remember that as the Sean Davis murder of Joe Hayden on the field, Austin.
Yes, I brought Artie Burns in to give up the 2-point attempt. Of course, I love that game. That's my favorite game.
That's the last time the Steelers scored 30 points in a game, so it has been a while.
Yeah, that would be cool. It's definitely possible here.
All right, any further things you wanted to get to with this game?
I don't believe so.
All right, we got a couple players returning from injury, notably the 49ers' Jimmy Garoppolo and Le'Veon Bell for the Jets. Their running back is returning.
Good for them. I still don't believe in them winning a game this year. Not yet. The Jets, that is. The 49ers are clear.
What about the 49ers? Any thoughts on them right now?
No, not really.
The Buccaneers lost Vita Vea, their defensive tackle, and tight end O.J. Howard for the season within a week. Sam Darnold is also out for the Jets, so Joe Flacco will start tomorrow.
This might be the Jets' only win of the year. It's possible now that they've made a change.
I don't know, man. I respect Joe Flacco, and I thought he was a little underrated at times during his career. I think that guy is beyond fried at this point.
With how Sam Darnold's been playing, I think it's almost better that they have no tape on him, and it gives the Jets a better chance.
See, the problem is at least Darnold can move a little bit. Joe Flacco's a statue back there now.
Yeah, Sam Darnold rushed for like 46 yards, a 46-yard run against the Broncos, so that was cool. But
it's hardly a rosy situation.
Yeah, no, I do not envy the Jets.
We already covered everything else. So are you ready to get into the picks?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so we had the Bears pulling out a last-minute victory over the Buccaneers. That was a pretty entertaining game, kind of the opposite of what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah, honestly, good for the Bears. Nick Foles now 2-0 when facing Tom Brady. So that's pretty cool. There's not only a handful of quarterbacks that are undefeated when facing Tom Brady and have multiple wins. So, him, and honestly, I didn't see that. Buccaneers haven't really been playing so hot the past, 2 weeks. Against the Chargers, they barely won that game. The Chargers really looked like they were going to win it. And obviously, they just lost this one. So, not good. Not good for the Buccaneers.
Panthers at Falcons. Atlanta's got a point at home. I don't like this game from a betting standpoint. And I don't like the Falcons under Dan Quinn. I don't like any of the teams with coaches that should be fired this year until they fire their coach, because I think that'll provide a little spark for a short period. But I don't know. I think the Panthers have done some nice things, but I think that Teddy Bridgewater's numbers are better than he's actually playing right now. And I like the Falcons a little bit better in the Dome right now, but I wouldn't hedge my bets on this one at all. I'll take the Falcons with the 1 point, but I don't feel confident about it.
I hate it. Absolutely hate it. I'd pick the Panthers +1, but this is a terrible game to bet on. I could see the Falcons winning.
Raiders versus the Chiefs. Kansas City's getting 12 at home. The Chiefs have typically manhandled the Raiders in the Patrick Mahomes era, so I'm going to take the Chiefs big here.
I will also follow with that same reasoning. The Chiefs are going to cover.
Cardinals at Jets. This one just recently got a line, so the Jets are +7, and we just mentioned Joe Flacco starting. I'm going to take the Cardinals. I know that we were probably both higher on them than we should have been after the first couple weeks, but I still think that I think the only way the Jets can win this game is if they stop the running game of the Cardinals, which they do have options to slow down the running game, but I just don't know how the Jets are going to score. Even with Bell coming back. Now, you want to talk about check down Charlies. Joe Flacco is definitely that. If you have Frank Gore or Lev Bell, throw those guys in because they're going to catch a ton of passes. They're going to catch like 10 passes for 29 yards, and he's going to run 10 times for like 20 yards. So that's a good day for PPR.
And I will also take the Cardinals to cover. I was picking them to cover without knowing what the point spread was, so I am sticking with that. The Jets are never going to... I just don't believe in the Jets to keep up with any team.
The Los Angeles Rams are going to Washington to play the Washington football team. Washington giving a touchdown at home. It's weird. Even though Dwayne Haskins hasn't been playing well, if he was starting in this game, I think I'd have taken Washington +7. It's kind of weird. He played really bad 2 weeks ago against Cleveland. He didn't play horribly against Baltimore. He wasn't great, but I felt like it would have made more sense to bench him 2 weeks ago and not this week. Kyle Allen is not the guy I'd feel comfortable going into a game with, so I'm going to take the Rams to win comfortably here.
Also picked the Rams to cover. I'm not a big Kyle Allen fan. Not for Washington, so Rams cover.
Bengals at Ravens. This one's kind of interesting because the Bengals haven't really been blown out yet, and the Ravens, they haven't been looking quite as good lately since their first couple of dominant wins to start the season. They might not be as good of a team as we thought they might have been the first couple of weeks, but the Bengals defense isn't very good. Maybe this is a game where the Ravens can put together those really long touchdown drives. I don't know. I've got this feeling that Joe Burrow, it's going to be hard to blow the Bengals out this year, but I think the Ravens will, though I'm not quite as confident as I would have been a couple weeks ago. So I'll take the Ravens -12 right now.
Wow, I'm shocked. I really thought you were going to take the plus, but I will take the Bengals +12. I like what I've seen from Joe Burrow. Despite his line playing badly, I think that Joe Burrow can at least compete, stay within 12.
One thing to note is that Baltimore's pass rush has been pretty bad this year, and the Bengals' offensive line, as we know, is awful. So who is going to be worse, I guess, is the question in this one. That's going to be the big determining factor for me.
Probably the Bengals' offensive line.
Probably. You think the way the Ravens operate against rookie quarterbacks, they usually throw blitzes that they've never seen before. They're so extreme about it. That's what they do. But Joe Burrow might be the exception to that, where he might be able to read that. He just seems like that kind of guy.
Yeah, he seems pretty smart.
So I definitely wouldn't feel super confident about my pick right now. Jaguars against the Texans. Bill O'Brien having been fired. Romeo Crennel is in as the Texans head coach. They're getting 5.5 at home. I'm going to take the Texans. I think that we're going to get a rejuvenated effort from the Texans in this one. The Jaguars have been kind of up and down. They've been competitive most nights, but I just think that the Texans are going to play energized and have a little bit of a new life. As limited as it might be, I think that they'll be able to win by a touchdown in this one, so I'll take the Texans with the points.
I think the Texans get the win, but I'm going to pick the Jaguars +5.5. I think they keep it within that 5. So I just think that the Jaguars have been playing decently enough, and I think they could just keep it close.
the Dolphins traveling to the West Coast to take on the 49ers, who are getting 9 points. Even without Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas, the San Francisco 49ers defensive front is still very good, relatively speaking, and the Dolphins' offensive line is still so bad. And I think the Dolphins are trying to wait to put in Tua until their offensive line has been situated, but it's just not there yet. So give me the Niners to win by a couple touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm going to pick San Fran to cover, too. I am worried about San Fran's quarterbacks going into this game. They elevated former Steelers Jamar Taylor and Ryan Allen for this game. I still think that they can cover the spread.
The 3-1 Colts at the 3-1 Browns. This one's an even pick'em. Where are you leaning here?
I'm leaning towards the Browns, and that's for a couple reasons. The Browns are getting David Njoku back, and the Colts are going to be without their starting left tackle, Anthony Casando, and Darius Slay. Those are two big losses for me. So I'm going to pick the Browns to win this one. How about you?
The Colts are playing so well. I think even without Darius Leonard, I think this defense is extremely legitimate. They've given up the least amount of points in the NFL, despite the fact that they've played more games than the Steelers and the Titans at this point, which is kind of interesting. I know they haven't played the best teams, but neither of the Browns. So this will be a good measuring stick game for both teams. I like where the Colts are at a little more, but both teams seem to have an identity right now. I'll have my eyes on this one. This will be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, definitely interesting.
Another interesting game for completely opposite reasons. We have the 0-4 Giants at the 1-3 Cowboys. Dallas is getting 8.5 at home. The Giants could get their first win, which would cause the sky to fall in Dallas, but the Cowboys could win too, and could, at least for a week, right the ship.
Yeah, so this is a Jason Garrett revenge game. I am going to still pick the Cowboys to cover because I think the Giants are just not a very good team. I could easily see Giants coming away with a win for this game, playing pissed off for Jason Garrett. So I will say that, but I'm going to go with the Cowboys cover.
Can the Giants run the football? That's my question. If they can, I think Daniel Jones can throw the ball in this defense because anyone can throw the ball in this defense. So, can they run they can establish the run. I like Daniel Jones and the Giants to win this game outright. I don't know that they will, but I definitely like them to keep it within an 8.5 point line here. I'll take the Giants plus the points. Let's move to Sunday Night Football. The Minnesota Vikings at the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle's getting 7. I gotta tell you, Austin, I was thinking Kirk Cousins in prime time, not good for the Vikings, but the Seahawks feel like the Packers of last year where they're just not going to win a ton of games by a ton of points.
That's how I feel about them. I feel like their defense is just going to keep any opposing offense in the game. It's up to Russell Wilson to just outplay whoever's on the other side.
And he will. The problem is that the easiest way to get Kirk Cousins off his game is to get in his face. But the Seahawks don't have their best blitzing player, their best pass rusher in Jamal Adams. And we already know when your safety is your best pass rusher, that's not good. They have no one that can rush the passer right now. So Cousins is going to have time. I think Wilson pulls it out, but there's just not the Seahawks need like 2 pass rushers and then help on the back end just to have a competent defense right now. They need help. But I'll take the Vikings plus 7.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the Seahawks are going to be able to run away with the game at all this year. It's going to be tough to pick them to cover in any game, really, unless like the spread is like -1 against another really good team. I will pick the Vikings plus 7 with that being said because I just don't know if they can blow away a team with their defense. The state it's in.
Monday Night Football, we got a doubleheader again. We've got the 1-3 Broncos at the 2-2 Patriots. There's no spread right now because I don't think we know if Cam Newton is going to play or not. Do we know yet if it's going to be him or Jarrett Stidham? I thought Newton was out at first, but now I'm not sure.
We do not know at the moment.
Well, I guess we gotta hedge our bet either way. I really wish we knew.
Yeah, for me, it's if the spread comes out as -7 or less for the Patriots, I'm going to take the Patriots. So just keep that in mind. Patriots -7 or less. How about you? What's the spread got to be for you to pick the Patriots?
I'll take the
I'm
Patriots.
sorry.
Well, I am going to take the Patriots. I'll have them. I guess I'm imagining an 8.5 point line, so I'll have the Patriots winning by 9. So that's where I'll set it right now. So I'll take the Patriots a 9-point win right now. Really hoping in my mind that Cam Newton plays.
It's definitely possible.
The latter of the Monday night doubleheader, the Chargers at the Saints. Saints are getting 7.5 at home. I like the Chargers in this one. Justin Herbert's playing really well right now, and they still have a solid defense. I'm concerned about Drew Brees. I know they got back in the win column last week against the Lions, but the Lions have a really awful defense. I'm not convinced that they've fixed things, and the big difference is Michael Thomas, obviously.
Yeah. I like how Justin Herbert's been playing. I agree with you on that. So I'm going to pick the Chargers plus 7.5. I just think that he has been playing really, really well and against some not easy defenses, too. So, I mean, I thought he did well against the Buccaneers. They have a solid defense in there, at least with their pass rushers. So, and I like Antoine Winfield. So, that being said, I'm going to pick the Chargers plus 7.5.
We are in agreement. Let's move to the Tuesday night game. We have the 4-0 Bills right now at the 3-0 Titans. No line right now because we still don't know if the game's going to be played. The Titans did just return to practice, though, so all signs are pointing in the right direction. I'll take the Bills to win by at least 2 touchdowns, given the Titans' lack of preparedness and the fact that the Bills are going to be pissed off.
Yeah, kind of agreeing with you. I'm going to take the Bills to cover the spread, whatever it is. It doesn't matter how big it is. I can't imagine it being more than 20 points. So I really think that the Bills are going to be able to cover against a team that hasn't been able to practice for a few weeks, and they're playing a practice squad team. The team is not going to have,
It's not going to be 20 points. It's just not. I don't think it's going to be that big.
That's what I'm saying. That would be the ridiculous scenario where I wouldn't pick the Bills to cover would be if the Bills were favored by 19 or 18. I think that the Bills win this handily. I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna say the Bills cover whatever the spread is because I guarantee it's gonna be less than 17. It's gonna be probably 14, 12 maybe.
Bold predictions and X Factors. Let's start with the X Factors. You go first.
So on offense, I got Marquise Pouncey. I'm really excited to see, after all those years practicing against each other, iron sharpening iron, how he handles former teammate Javon Hargrave. I'm really excited to see that matchup. It's something I've been thinking about ever since I learned that the Hargrave is going to be an Eagle and the Steelers were going to be facing the Eagles this year. I was waiting for that matchup, so that's one I'm excited to watch. And then on defense, I'm picking Terrell Edmonds. I feel comfortable with the defense everywhere in this game, especially pass rush-wise, so I'm going to pick the weakest link because I feel like the Steelers have the Eagles outmatched on basically every level. It's just really tough for the Eagles to be getting something going here. So again, I'm picking Terrell Edmonds because he is the quote-unquote weakest link. Who are your X factors?
I'm going to start with Eric Ebron on offense. We talked about the tight ends and their matchup with the Eagles linebackers. I think this could be a big game for Eric Ebron. He got involved for the first time in a big way 2 weeks ago against the Texans. I think that he picks up right where he left off 2 weeks ago, and I think he'll play a big part in the Steelers game tomorrow. And on defense, what do I want to go with here? I just picked Devin Bush. I don't want to pick him again. You went with Terrell Edmonds. I'll go with... I guess I will go with Devin Bush because, here's the thing. He's probably... Either him or Edmonds is going to be going up with Zach Ertz, right?
Yeah, basically.
And if he's the most dangerous weapon, that's the guy I want playing the best game for sure. So I didn't want to pick Devin Bush back-to-back weeks or games, I should say, but I will just because I think it makes the most sense. So I'll take Eric Ebron and Devin Bush as my X factors. Do you have any bold predictions on your mind right now?
So bold predictions that Terrell Edmonds gets 2 turnovers in this game, and at least one is an interception. And another one is that the Steelers give up no sacks in this game to a really tough pass rush. And then a third, I want to pick something stupid and silly. Steelers win the coin toss. That's my bold prediction. Okay, how about you?
Make sure you get that down in writing.
I will.
All right, I'll go with, because we like to do our X Factors and bold predictions kind of linked. I'll go with Eric Ebron to grab 10, and I'm feeling a little extra today. I'll go 200 yards, but no touchdowns. It's going to be 200 yards. No, I'm just kidding. I'll give him 2 touchdowns, too.
Nice.
And Devin Bush, how about a 12 tackle game, 1 INT, and 2 sacks. When was the last time he had a sack? It's been a little while.
Yeah, it hasn't been a while. I don't remember. Maybe like the Chargers game last year.
Yeah. And third one, I'll have Deontay Johnson. Either there's some sort of return touchdown, whether it's Deontay Johnson or Ray McLeod. How about that?
That's a fair one. Some special teams love.
Where do I place my bet? It's a joke because we're in New York State and we can't bet. All right, final score prediction here. Give me your final thoughts on the game here. It's going to be Eagles versus Steelers. We have the Steelers are 7-point favorites according to ESPN right now.
So everything points to the Steelers winning pretty handily. I think I said it on the last podcast, but this really shapes up to be a classic Mike Tomlin loss, with everything considered. I am going to say, screw that. Steelers are going to have a complete game. They're not going to play down to their competition. They're going to win 28-6. That is my score prediction. And that being said, the Steelers cover. What do you say?
I'm going to take the Eagles plus 7 here, just because I can't get out of my mind the way the Steelers play after a bye week, and they always come out of the gate really slow. It's like they're shaking off the rust. And when you double that up with the fact that they've still been knocking off the rust from no preseason, we're talking double rust. So I like the Eagles to cover here, but I'm going to take the Steelers to win as they catch fire late in the game, and they go ahead with a late Chris Boswell field goal to win 23-20. So I'll take the Eagles plus 7, but obviously I hope I'm wrong. Like I said, the key is getting up on this team early. In Austin's scenario, I'm imagining a couple scores early. You go up at least 7-14 nothing early. That's going to do you wonders. That doesn't win you the game, but it gets you close.
Yeah, no, for sure. Scoring early is really good. It's really demoralizing for the other team.
Especially when they're having the issues they're having on offense already. So, we'll see. The only difference between the Mike Tomlin special you're thinking of is it's not on the road. But, yeah, I mean, I think we were looking at this game all bye week saying, even after the Eagles won, saying, this looks like a game that they could just drop for no reason.
It'd be classic. It'd really be Steelers football if they do. I'll be surprised, but I won't be. It's kind of expected.
Did the Steelers have that kind of game last year? I mean, is it fair to say that they had that when they had Duck and Mason Rudolph playing quarterback?
That was tough. That one was last year was kind of an anomaly because the Steelers were actually bad last year with Duck and Mason Rudolph as their quarterback, so they were allowed to blow games to bad teams. I mean, maybe you know what I'll say, that last game where you're playing the backups of Baltimore, RG3, that was a bad loss. I
don't think the Steelers were favored in that game. I just think that they were done, and they knew they were done. Whether or not that's right, that's one thing. That's just what I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
So let's go back to 2018. I mean, there's that Raiders game, but remember Ben Roethlisberger missed almost a whole half of that game. So him not being there was a big part of that. So, I mean, obviously the Raiders game counts as one, but I think the last time where there was that kind of game would have been the Broncos game just 2 weeks before that, because the Chargers won 12 games. That was a game sandwiched in between those 3 devastating losses. But the Broncos one was one where they were clearly a bad team and the Steelers could not beat them.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I hate that game.
There was a lot to hate about all three of those games. I think looking back, I think that the Chargers game is still the one I get most upset about.
It was just so bad, man. That Chargers game with Sean Davis killing his own players, referees not seeing false starts and other...
John Bostic
things.
on Keenan Allen on the biggest play of the game.
Just fun times. I love that game.
Or the Ben Roethlisberger pick to Shelby Harris in Denver.
That was fun. That was fun, too.
Antonio Brown giving an interception to Denver when it bounced off his hands. Or the Raiders game, the Chris Boswell slip.
How could I forget? Almost thinking I broke my hand.
So let's hope we don't have a repeat of any of those games. How about that?
Yep. Or it could be 34-3 against the Eagles.
Yeah.
When you were pretty favored.
Well, the key is it's not in Philadelphia because the Steelers can't win there for some reason. It's like Chicago. Those two places are houses of horrors for Pittsburgh, but at home they seem to take care of business against Philly.
No brotherly love.
No.
That's why. No city of brotherly love.
Like I was saying, if they ever go to when they go to that 18 games season or 17 game season, I'd love to see neutral site games against the Eagles every year. I think that would be really cool. I'd love for there to be more of a rivalry between these two teams. I mean, there's no real baseball rivalry between the two cities because the Pirates have been so bad for so long. But, I mean, the Phillies haven't been that great either. They do have a World Series in the last 20 years, but that's it. And then, obviously, the hockey rivalry is off the charts. I mean, they hate each other, but there's never been much of one for football. And I think that there could be, but it's hard to when you only play once every 4 years.
Yeah, man, let's get a Steelers rivalry going.
Never
former
forget.
teams united.
Never forget that. I mean, obviously, we weren't alive, but it's pretty cool. But often people forget that the Steelers combined with the, I think, Chicago Cardinals the year later, they were called the Carpets because they went 0-10.
Yeah, they got worked.
They did. Anyways, what are we going to be saying if the Steelers win this game either close or in big fashion? Will we have learned anything about this team?
I feel like I've grown as a person in that regard. I'm no longer going to jump to conclusions like that. I think that it's still an NFL game, and even if you play close to a team that's bad, it's not always that your team is bad. You could still be a really good team. Point being, the Chargers took the Chiefs to overtime. Did I start thinking that the Chiefs were a bad team or that the Chargers were amazing? No. I just, sometimes a game plan can really change things. There's just one play that changes things. It doesn't always mean much. So even if this is a close game, I will not be thinking much about it. If they lose, I'll be thinking about it. But if it's a close game, I'm not gonna freak out.
Yeah, I still think for the Steelers there are bigger tests ahead. I don't think winning either way is going to mean a ton in the grand scheme of things, other than it'll be a win.
Yeah, I mean, you still obviously hope to blow them out because of on paper stuff, but I don't expect it.
No, definitely not. Unless if they start out fast, but we have not seen that for a long time. So, in the meantime, if you have any questions about the show, please feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. You can check out our episodes posted on SoundCloud and YouTube under the name Stronger Than Steel Podcast. And check out our social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So be sure to check that out. Austin, thanks for joining me, and enjoy the game. You want to live tweet tomorrow? Are you going to be able to?
Yeah, I'll be able to.
All right. It's all yours if you want it.
Sure, sounds good.
All right, awesome.
I can do that.
Well, Steelers Nation, thank you as always for listening, and enjoy the game tomorrow. I'm sure you'll be listening to this in the morning, so enjoy the game later today then.
Don't forget to set your lineups. Good luck, everybody.
For sure. Don't forget about the COVID. I don't know how is all that working for fantasy, I suppose. I mean, I guess it still probably falls in line because all the games will be played by Tuesday.
Yeah. fantasy app for at least NFL's fantasy app keeps putting out like memos like this game will count if it stays on Tuesday for this week. I would stay away from playing any of those players regardless in case the game gets moved, because then if you're stuck after Sunday with those players, you're screwed. Like you might be able to pick up some backups from the Monday night game, but you're in trouble. Stay away from playing fantasy on with the Bills and Titans this week.
Yeah, that almost happened to me a week ago. I actually was not paying attention. I thought Devontae Adams was going to play, and then I saw that he was out, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then I forgot I had Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and I was like, oh, I actually have him. I was almost super worried for a second there, but I lucked out. But, I mean, think about it. There could be a false positive on the morning of the game, and they'd probably push it back.
Yeah. They make the game like a 4:25 game, or if it was at 4:25, they make it like a 7:05 game.
I thought it was at night. Are they doing it during the day? That would probably be a better idea for logistical reasons.
Wait, which game are we talking about right now?
Bills-Titans.
Oh, I actually don't know the time.
Let me check that real quick, because now I'm curious. Bills-Titans is at 7 p.m., so if that game gets pushed back, it's going to push to 10. There's not much room for error, so you better hope there aren't false positives. So basically, just like you said, Austin, just don't mess with it if you don't have to.
Yeah, no. If you don't have to start Titans or Bills players.
Looks like we lost Austin there. Well, why don't we make that a good time to call it quits? Until next time, thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Have a terrific day.
If you can hear me, have a good day.
There we go. We got you.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.